Chapter 6.5, Properties of Logarithms. Now before we look at our properties of logarithms, let's briefly review our properties of exponents. So if you remember, when we're multiplying with like bases, like m squared times m to the fourth, we add the exponent. So therefore this becomes m squared plus 4, right? m2 plus 4, so that's going to be m to the 6th power. Then when you're dividing with like bases, like x to the 7th over x squared, we subtract the exponents. So this is x to the 7 minus 2, which is x to the 5th power. Now if terms raised to a power, you multiply the exponent. So we have a to the third, b to the 4th, and then it's all raised to the 6th power. What we do is we multiply the exponents. We distribute it. So it's a to the 3rd times 6, and a to the 4th times 6. So that would be a to the 18th, sorry, that's a b, and then b to the 24th. Now the properties of logarithms are very similar. So the product property, we have log base b of m times n, and so what you can do to expand it is we can add the logs. So it's a log base b of m plus log base b of n. So when you're multiplying the values, then we can expand by adding the logs. And with the properties, we can go back and forth. So therefore, if we see two logs that are being added together, we can condense it by multiplying those values together, m and n. Quotient property. So when we're dividing m and n, then we can expand by subtracting. So divide, subtract. It's very similar to here, right? So when we're dividing, we subtract. When we multiply, we add. So it's very similar to that. So divide, so if you see divide, then we're going to subtract the logs when we expand. And again, we can go the other direction as well. So if you see subtracting logs, then we can combine it by dividing. And with the power property, notice we have log base b of m to the n, and then it changes to n times log base b of m. So what happens is that exponent goes to the front and it multiplies to the log. So when you see a raised to the power, when it's raised to a power, then it's going to multiply in the front. So multiply to the log. Now we're going to use properties of logarithms to evaluate each logarithmic expression and simplify completely. So in the first example, we have log base a of 4 to the 16th. Now there's a couple ways that we can represent it, but because I want to use some of these properties here, I want to use specifically the product property just so you can see how we can break it down. So 16, we can rewrite that as 4 times 4. So let me write it that way. Log base 4 of 4 times 4. And then if you remember our property from a previous lesson, if we have log base b of b, that just equals 1. So what happens is if you have the same base, and then y is b here, so b and b, so it's the same exact value, it just equals 1. So you'll see that when we simplify letter a all the way, it's important to remember that. We have log base 4 of 4 times 4, and so notice we are multiplying here, 4 times 4, so it's like our product property, m and n. They're the same values, but that's okay. What we can do is we're going to expand it by adding the logs. So expand it by adding the logs. So what this will become is log base 4 of 4 plus log base 4 of 4. Okay, so we expanded it by adding. And remember what I wrote earlier, log base b of b is 1. So since it's the same base, log base 4 of 4, then that's just 1. And then log base 4 of 4 also becomes 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Now for letter b, we have natural log of e. Now the base of natural log, so if you don't see it there, there's an invisible e. So it's natural log of e to the e. So what natural log of e to the e equals is also just 1. So we're going to use the power property here. We have an exponent. So what happens is it moves to the front and it multiplies to the entire natural log. So it's going to become 6 times natural log of e plus 5 times natural log of e. And then, like I mentioned earlier, natural log of e is just 1. And so now we have 6 times 1 plus 5 times 1, or 6 plus 5, which is 11. Now for letter C, we have log base 5 of 75 minus log base 5 of 3. So taking a look at our properties above of our logarithms, we're subtracting here. So what that reminds us of, the middle one, log base b of m minus log base b of n. So we see that they're subtracting. And so what we can do to condense it, to try and simplify, is divide the values. Now it's important to note that the numerator is the first number and the denominator is the last number. So we're going to condense this because there isn't anything more that I could really do with this one. So let's go ahead and condense by dividing the 75 and 3. So log base 5 of 75 divided by 3. And then now that's condensed. Now we could simplify a little bit more. We have 75 over 3. 75 over 3 is just 25. 25. And so 25, we recognize that, 25 is really 5 times 5, or 5 squared. So in this case, what I'm going to do, instead of doing it using the product property, I'm going to use the power property. I'm going to rewrite 25. 25 is 5 to the square. So in this way, I can demonstrate how either doing it with the power property or the product property, you'll still get the same answer. So what we're going to do is I'm going to replace the 25 with the 5 squared. So this is going to become log base 5 of 5 squared. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the power property. So this 2 is going to multiply to the front of the log. So it's going to be 2 times log base 5 of 5. And then because it's the same base with this value here, it's going to be 2, right? Because the 2 was still here. This is the 2 from the front. Times log base 5 of 5 is just 1. And so our final answer is just 2. Let's try letter D. Log base 4 of 2 plus log base 4 of 32. In this case, we are adding the separate logs. And so when we're adding, we can condense it to multiply those values, 2 and 32, right? We condense it to a single log. Let's do that. Condense it to a single log. And then we're going to multiply 2 times 32. So be very careful. It's not adding the numbers when you combine it. It's not 2 plus 32. It is 2 times 32 by using the properties of logarithms. So log base 4, simplify, of 2 times 32, which is 64. And 64 is related to 4, right? 64 we can rewrite as 64 is 4 to the 3rd power. So I'm going to substitute that for my 64. So now we can see this as log base 4 of 4 to the 3rd. And then again, we can bring that 3 to the front, so it's going to be 3 times log base 4 of 4. So it's going to be 3 times log base 4 of 4 is just 1. So the final answer is just 3. So practice with E through H. They're very similar to the ones above it, so that may help. So pause the video and try these out. So trying these out, letter E you should have gotten 2. So I use the product property here. So log base 3 of 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Then I expanded it by adding the log. So log base 3 of 3 plus log base 3 of 3 is 1 plus 1, which is 2. Then for letter F, we just move the exponents to the front. Natural log of E both turns to 1, right? So 2 natural log of E plus 5 natural log of E ends up being 2 plus 5, which is 7. Then we have log base 2 of 16 minus log base 2 of 2. So with the subtraction, we're going to condense and divide. So notice this isn't log base 2 of 16 over log base 2 of 2. That is something completely different. Okay, so be very careful. We're condensing it to a single log. So that becomes log base 2 of 8. 8 is 2 to the 3rd power, so I substitute it in. Then I use the power property, and my final answer is 3. The last one, 3 and 27, we're going to multiply those together. That becomes 81. And 81 is 3 to the 4th power. Using the property again, we get 4 times log base 3 of 3, which is just 4.